I love that you guys chose the shade because I am a fan of the shade as well.
What's your podcast?
My podcast is called Inspiring Young Men to Integrity.
Oh,
Indeed.
interesting.
Yes, it's like I said, a conversation I think should happen more often. So, where shall I sit here? Let me sit. I'll come sit on this side here.
Have most people said no to you?
You know, there are some who say no, and actually more say no, and because it's a big ask, isn't it? When you're asked to be on camera unexpectedly, and okay, I'll make sure we're on the camera here. Let me start off by learning your name. So I heard you're Maggie, is that correct?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
And you are?
Faruq.
Say it again.
Faruq.
How many?
Take a chess piece to Rook and
Yes.
add FA to it. Faruq.
Faruq.
There you go, nailed it.
How do you spell it?
Faruq.
Got it. Nice to meet you. Have you ever been appreciated for your beard?
More often than you think, yeah. Yeah.
Is it a big deal for
Very
you?
rarely for Maggie, but it tends to happen every now and again.
That's awesome. For me, beards aren't a big thing, so it's just out of
Depends on
convenience.
the size of the
You
beard.
kind of have one.
I do,
Yeah.
but some young men can't grow one, and so they're the ones who really come and sort of try to feel happy for you, and you're like, thanks.
I see.
I'm glad to meet you both, Faruq and Tammy.
Maggie.
Maggie.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Tammy.
Oh, shoot, I did say that,
You
didn't
watch
I?
too much
You have to start
Parks and
again.
Rec.
Well,
I
Binyam,
could have just been like, yeah, it's Tammy, sure.
sometimes if I say it confidently enough, then people will be like,
That's great, sure.
I'm glad to meet you both. Faruq, you stutter a little bit, is that correct?
Yep, I do, yeah.
When I first moved to the country, I also had a stutter as well too. That was once upon a time, and it still comes out when I'm a little bit nervous too.
Got it.
Has it been a lifetime thing for you?
No, 5th, 6th grade, I think I acquired it.
No way.
Yeah, I wasn't born with it. It was a lot worse than it is now.
So there was a catalyst at some point, I imagine.
At some point, that's what all the speech therapists I've spoken
Okay,
to have
okay.
mentioned. I haven't been able to pinpoint what that is.
Yeah.
But through just life experiences and
Gotcha.
continuing to be out of my comfort zone, it's gotten better.
Gotcha. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
there are still certain characters and sounds.
Yeah.
In a very cruel twist of fate, my name is generally challenging.
Oh shoot. That's okay. The lovely thing about this. Oh, Tammy.
Maggie.
Maggie. My short-term memory, as you're seeing, is not my forte. Beautiful to have a couple of inputs. So I see that one also fell over, but we have that one there still, so we're good that way.
Oh, wow, yeah, you have all the cameras.
I do. So it's nice having a few, and then I also have mics as well too, so that I can get better sound.
So do you put these just on, like, do you actually use the video part of this?
I do use the video, the audio, and so I do mixing. I've been learning that as well. I've made the videos for online content for some time, Maggie, and as you do it more, you start like picking up on some, I don't know, like tidbits and things that are important apparently, and so I try to do a little bit better on that and enhance it a bit better. So, yeah.
The girl's having some issues with her scooter.
Oh darn.
Distracting.
At least there are some more options for her. All right, Maggie,
Caught you
Faruq.
in the act there.
Thank you. It's not obvious. It's very obvious. I've got a list of 15 questions that we can choose from. Faruq, choose me a number between 1 and 15. 11. So, the question is integrity in a romantic relationship different from a platonic relationship?
I would say no.
No. Okay.
I'm kind of with you. Yeah, I agree.
You
No, I think someone's integrity sits one level above their individual relationships. I think it's more holistic to the person and who they are and how they bring themselves into the world.
Okay. Let's start off by defining what integrity means for you guys. Couple spot.
I think it's how you act, like, oh God, it's hard to describe.
It's easier to see when you see it, but you're like,
Yeah.
how do you put words to it, right?
It's like what you say you actually do what you're going to do. You
Yeah.
walk your talk. Yeah.
Oh, Jack.
Yeah, I think it's how honest you are
Yeah.
with yourself, with the people you interact with the world around you, how kind you are, how patient you are,
Yeah.
and ultimately, yeah, kind of bringing it back to the actions that you carry out.
Sure enough.
And I think what they say about someone as a person.
Cool. So in some sense, there's moral infusion in that word, isn't there? It's like, you should do this, you shouldn't do this for whatever reason, right? Yeah. Cool. And so you're saying it should be constant even in the midst of a relationship that's romantic and a platonic relationship as well.
Yeah, because I think it starts with yourself. I
Tell
think.
me more. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think if you're not living in a way that's integral to your values, that will go to your friendships and that will go to your romantic relationships.
It affects all of your life. So you're
Yeah.
saying it starts internally and then it goes external.
And I also think a romantic relationship is a friendship. So, yeah.
Cool. But then there's a platonic relationship isn't necessarily romantic, but you're saying
Oh,
the other
sorry.
way.
Like, yes, it would
Yeah.
be platonic and then, yeah.
And then romantic.
yeah.
Gotcha. But
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily work backwards in the same way.
No.
A platonic relationship doesn't. Although you could argue for that, couldn't you, in some sense, where you could say there's a level of invested love, just in a different expression.
Yeah, but there's three, then that reminds me of the three types of love.
Oh, tell me. I just heard this from someone else recently. Okay.
There's the three types of love,
Yeah.
which are, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Philia,
Okay.
Eros,
Yeah.
and I forget the last one.
It's a
But
sexual
basically,
love, brotherly love.
it's like the love you have for just people in general. That's a type of love.
Gotcha, yeah.
And then there's the love you have once that turns from just loving people in general to friendship. And then there's the romantic love. Yeah. Oh, agape, philia, and eros.
There
Those
we
are-
go.
Yeah.
Those are Greek words.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Did you know this, brother?
No.
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 Tell me, what does it feel like?
Maggie.
Oh! Oh my, Maggie. So remember Maggie. Thank you for being patient. Maggie, do you remember mine?
No.
That's okay. We're even, kind of. That's okay.
You introduced yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't.
What is your name,
Oh
sir?
goodness.
Yeah.
Biniam.
Biniam.
Yes.
Okay.
Binyam.
We can call you Alan.
Alan. You know, sometimes after I've introduced myself, Faruq, just to be silly, I'll tell people my name is George when they're trying to remember, just to see how referentially close they can get. They're like, that doesn't sound right. So George is the one I usually choose as my pseudo. Biniam. Yes. I was so intrigued by you guys already. I'm like, forgetting that part. So, would you say then there are different investments of integrity in different kinds of relationships then? Or is that still the same right across the board?
Yeah, I would say there's different levels of integrity. Like if you
Yeah.
meet somebody and I don't know. I think the integrity deepens the deeper your relationships go.
Okay.
But I still think it comes back to how you are with
Into-
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember I was listening to I think it was Brene Brown, and she was like, if you run into somebody that you know casually and they're like, let's go for coffee, and you're like, yeah, but you don't want to, don't say yes. That's where it would begin.
Everyone's been there.
We can relate, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
But I do think it would deepen. Like the integrity would deepen. And you know, you make plans with people, and it's like the plans you know you're not going to keep. Like it's like, oh, let's do something next week.
Right.
But then there's the kind of plans as relationships deepen.
Yeah.
You know that those plans are going to happen.
You're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's the depth in how some integrities carry you further in that
Yeah.
connection where it doesn't in others. And
I
then,
agree. I mean, I think it's kind of a case of how much of yourself that you show to people. Like, I think as that relationship deepens, you're more vulnerable. You're sharing more about yourself, your life, your motivations, pains, all those things, and being honest about that comes from a place of like I think strong integrity. Whereas if it's that person that I run into and they want to go for coffee and I don't, that conversation doesn't have that depth. I think that's kind of a big difference.
so then would it be a lack of integrity to do what Brene Brown was saying when it's like, we should do coffee, but I don't want to tell you that I don't feel like it because I don't want to go there. Like,
I think it would be a lack of integrity to say yes to it, knowing you didn't want to say yes to it,
oh, I see.
to yourself, right?
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're being true to yourself first and foremost again.
Yes.
Okay.
Because then you make those plans knowing, like, I really don't want to do this. And that's not really nice for the other person.
Right, right, okay. So you're also being aware of social paradigms where you
Yeah.
don't want to add more
Yeah.
discomfort where it's
Yeah.
unnecessary.
But then there is a level of it. Like, I had a friend and we made plans to get a tea, and then she's like, can we still go for tea this week? And I was like, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I was like, yes, because I said I would.
that's
so,
commitment.
yeah.
Gotcha. So I guess that also brings up another zone where integrity, do you think it's subjective or objective?
That's a good question.
'Cause it seems to me when we're even having this conversation, there's an awareness of collective cultural acknowledgement of what is inbounds and out of bounds. Because there's some things that we're saying
Yeah.
we do this collectively and we understand. Hey,
Yeah.
what's up? We should hang out, and we kind of know it's not going to happen. For example, versus
Part of it is both, actually. I think
Yeah.
there's a bit of an overlap. There are certain things that are just right and wrong,
Yeah.
but I think then that leads into the other side of it, because these things that are right and wrong are learned through teachings, through experience, anything quite like that. And depending on what someone learns and the experiences they go through, they might have a different subjective definition of integrity.
Right.
However, there I think are some truths that extend beyond borders, cultures, etc., that are true,
Right.
but they have to be learned.
and that's the easy process, right? The learning part.
That's the hardest part.
I agree. It's energy infusing, isn't it? Like there's a lot of energy that goes to say, we're going to do things the right way, even though it takes energy. So, Maggie, I've been practicing, by the way.
Let's just take a moment to appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for being patient. So sometimes it's a big deal, and so I want to catch on that. The theme of my podcast, like I said, is specifically for young men to have access to this conversation, and even experientially as well. In general, from both your observations, would you say young men are doing amazing and stellar in this, or is it a challenging progression for them?
It's challenging. Yeah, I would say it's challenging in many ways. I have 5 nephews, so when I look at it that way, I think integrity gets very muddled in with like addiction to technology. So there's,
I mean, in the application of it,
yeah,
because technology is very
it's
compelling.
addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of like doing what, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that adds a layer to it.
I'll come back to that in just a moment.
Okay.
Faruq, what are your thoughts?
Definitely challenging.
Yeah.
I think I don't know about the technology piece,
Yeah.
but I think if we say that integrity comes from deepening relationships, friends, serious relationships, whatever, and being vulnerable, being in tune with how someone feels, their emotions that drive them, that therefore drive their principles and values, it's tough to do that, I think, when you're a young male, because there is a bit of a cultural stigma put on that, and it's not really celebrated and actively encouraged. Personally, it took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to learn how valuable it can be to be in tune with my emotions and open up, and just how absolutely game-changing that really is, and how valuable that is for our relationships and friendships. But
I
it's
definitely wanted to hear more about that. That's intriguing. Okay. Maggie, you pointed technology as one of the primary points of challenge for young men today. How does it distract or take away from the focus or even awareness of integrity for young men?
Because I think it's just that's what it is. It's a distraction and it's an
Gotcha.
addiction.
Gotcha.
So rather than learning like the basic skills they would learn in relationship with people, it's
Socially.
like, yes, it's like, it's just an addiction to a screen.
I see. So you're saying integrity, this kind of feeds into something I've been wondering for some time now. So one of the things I've thought through is it seems integrity is a moot point or unnecessary if you're the only person in the world.
Yeah.
But it only makes sense when we find ourselves in community with other people. Because now we're starting to think about how do we interact in a way that we're all going to survive.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
With it, technology, it takes away from that focus in figuring out how do we do this well. Because
Yeah.
now you're having a relationship with the screen as opposed to real life individuals.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I was actually going back to what you mentioned earlier about
Yeah.
integrity as one person. I don't know if there's that big, like I still feel like I still feel like it plays a part
Yeah.
versus just being integrity within a community.
I see. So even if you're the only person in the world, it would still have a
There's
place.
still like a moral compass that people feel like in some way.
Now, it seems I did promise only 5 minutes. You guys are making this really juicy, so I hope I can trespass just a few more minutes. One of the challenges, it seems, Faruq, is in general, culturally, we find ourselves comparing ourselves to each other, right? What's the right way to engage so that we can get what our needs are that needs to be met? And so a huge part of that is people not maybe feeling safe to be who they truly are because you're playing a narrative that is collectively agreed upon or accepted or that kind of thing. And I guess that's where I was going for when I was saying if you're the only person in the world, I guess it'd be hard to even get out of that mold of saying, how do I like perform or engage socially when there's no one else around, right? So you could almost, wouldn't you say, truly be who you are when you're the only person?
I think integrity extends beyond being social and social norms, and just the way you interact with the world around you. So in that case, I think it would apply. But obviously, from a social perspective, there's no one else around. That kind of goes out the window.
You were referencing a little earlier about your new season that you're relishing in this zone of being aware, self-aware as a man. Do you feel comfortable sharing what the catalyst was for you in bringing you to awareness? Feel free to say no, that's a bit of a personal ask. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, not because you have to as well too.
No, I don't mind.
But
I'm just kind of thinking like how I would tell that story. I mean, it's in like the TLDR of it, really. Just how young people talk.
How's that helpful?
Kidding.
Maggie, I still got your name.
Kidding. But
For me, I would say decades living without it, desiring to live with it, but not knowing how to access it, seeing glimmers here and there of what it could look like, and again, having that desire, but not knowing how to even approach it.
okay.
Discovering, even in the midst of this whole commitment that I'm in the midst of now, how culture also plays a part in making it less accessible, just because of the expectations of what masculinity looks like, just because of the ways that we're taught to have save face or survive as men, what that looks like, and even figuring out how we're going to reinterpret what that could look like. And so for me, it led me down a path of dishonesty for a lifetime, living duplicitously, there is that word.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then coming to a point where I said, I don't know who I am, but I want to know who I am, and to also engage with my world with honesty. The dishonest piece was very strong for me, and so the threshold which I crossed over into this new world also entailed losing everything in the former world, sadly, right? But being in this space now, it's a lot more meaningful now. Like, there's a cost. I think there's a cost to integrity or living with integrity, right? So that was so when you were sharing just a little tad bit of yours, I was like, ooh, I would love to hear your trajectory too.
Well, no, it's funny you ask. I think actually the biggest learning I had that kind of set off this whole journey, and I don't think it actually ever ends. Like, I don't think you ever
I agree.
done.
I
I got it all checked.
So
I can
true.
move on in my life.
Yeah.
Is actually this. I think is being comfortable just talking about it. I think that sets any person up for exploration. And so for me, the hardest part that I was up against when I was a lot younger was that nature versus nurture piece in my family, and the fact that there isn't much emotional vulnerability in that household when I was growing up, and so I didn't really know how to.
Yeah.
Didn't really learn that.
It
And it's
was
a hard
modeled.
thing to just learn from a book or a movie. You
Yeah.
actually have to experience it.
I agree.
And so for me, I found that when I really leaned into my social circles, when I moved away from home, when I really got a lot of distance, I was able to kind of thrust myself into this world, and in a bit of a adapt or die mindset, start figuring out myself, start figuring out what's important to me, and then based on that, start figuring out how I want to contribute and add value to this world. And I think that would be very, very difficult to do without going through some of these like self-awareness practices, talking with friends, going to talk to psychologists, finding solace in various communities on the internet helped a lot. Helped me see that having the conversation and talking about it is not actually a bad thing. It doesn't diminish my masculinity. It doesn't diminish the way that I see myself in the mirror. If anything, it complements it and enhances it. And I think that really set off, like that really just had all the dominoes falling in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I get emotional on these kind of things just because it's a vulnerable share, you know?
Stuff. I mean, I think, and then, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, that speech impediment piece,
Yes.
and that definitely weighed on me for many, many years. And I think this process had me feeling a lot more comfortable with it,
Yeah.
and realizing that everyone has something and it's just part of my identity, and people can love it, hate it. I can figure out how to just live my life knowing that these are the cards I was dealt, and other people probably have even worse cards.
Sure.
And I think that's helped a lot.
I love stories like this just because it makes it a little more accessible for others who are longing for access. Just because it's, like you were saying, it's helpful when it's modeled, right? Instead of just reading or hearing about it, it's like, how can you find yourself in a community or a space where it's cultivated?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like not having those models at an early age, I think, can hurt. But I don't think it's impossible by any means.
I agree. So let's say there are a group of young men collectively who are coming to both of you individually and saying, could you give us some insights that can make this a little bit more reachable for us? What would you say for, say, top 3 things to consider embarking on? Let me start with you.
To find integrity?
Yes, to find and live with it,
I
Maggie.
think the first thing would be just know yourself. Like spend time alone. Spend time with yourself.
That's a scary proposition for many, right, Maggie? And yes. For those who find that scary, how would you desting the fang of that idea? Because they're like, I don't know what I'll find. I don't know how scary it's going to be to spend time alone. What would you say?
Ooh, do it. You'd have to do
Embark
it.
on it,
Yeah.
Get used to it is what you say.
Yeah. And like do it in small doses. Like spend 5 minutes a day with yourself and see what happens. Yeah.
And the purpose of spending time by yourself is what?
Because then you get to know yourself. I think it's easy to put on masks when we're in different groups of people, but it's like when you come home at the end of the day and take that mask off, like who are you? Yeah. So I think that would be a step.
Spend time by yourself with the mission to get to know you again.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like think of little kids. They can spend hours just playing alone. Like we lose that ability. It's like why? Yeah.
Because we grew up according to a script that wasn't our own,
Yeah.
fortunately.
Yeah.
We're having to like write a personal script that commercially sells.
Right.
You want to keep that analogy going.
Yeah.
No swimming against the tide here. No, I like that. I would honestly build off of that, where that process is important, but then talking about it is also important, and like letting people in. Maybe not to your deepest, darkest thoughts, but knowing what that limit is, and just being able to share insights, but even just build deeper relationships on the back of knowing more about yourself, and not keeping it always very surface level.
Really cool. Final question, Maggie. Faruq. Spell your name again. Faruq. There we go.
So it's funny. He remembers the spelling of your name. He doesn't even know your name.
Maggie, what's your name again? I got it now. Don't you do that to me. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Why did you start the podcast?
Yeah.
What's your story?
So I shared my story a little bit where I lived for years without it. When I first moved to this country, I spent a couple of years feeling like I was on the outside looking in socially. So, you know how it is when we really want to be seen and enveloped and loved and engaged with and all those beautiful things socially. I didn't know how to figure that out when I first moved here culturally. So I've never forgotten that feeling, Faruq. I remember that as detailed as I can because that's, I think, what drives me. At some point, a few years in, I started understanding how to, like, I had to deconstruct the culture here and say, okay, here's why they do what they do. Here's how I can get somewhere along the way. That led me to a life of codependency for many years, where I could read people really well and execute really well on what I felt they needed, and I achieved success and love and so on. But at some point along the way, again, like I said, I felt I was living duplicitously, where I did not know who I was in the first place. That reference point. And you build up this life that eventually you're like, I think everyone thinks they know me and they love what they're seeing, but it's not authentic. It's not true. It's not what I'd like to be known for who I truly am. And so when that point came a few years back, I made that decision. It was a painful, hard decision, and I'd already hurt a lot of people in the process. But my superpower, if I can say it, is connecting with people, and especially helping them feel welcome, like having a place, like just acknowledged. And at the heart of it, like you were both saying, this is a huge part that comes from internal, external, right? So how can I help people find what I found in knowing who I am first and foremost, being okay with that, and then engaging with the world on that honest premise. And I really would like to make that more accessible, hence why the focus on integrity, that conversation saying, what would it look like to go back to the core of what makes you, discovering what that is, like you were saying, darling. And then growing in confidence in that to be able to walk into the world and say, ta-da, here's me, take me as I am, regardless if the world says yay or nay. That's why. Thanks for the question.
I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been really sweet.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Maggie, when I see you again. Faruq, thank you for sharing as well, too. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank
You guys are delightful.
you. You too.
Thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure. And thank you you were just about to lie down and get comfortable. I'm like, before you do.
That was so fun.
To be honest, I'm gonna go grab a burger. So not yet. But
Not yet.
this is great.
I hope to see you guys
All
again
the
along
best.
the way.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Likewise. Darling.
How many people have actually said yes?
Today, you're my third interview. The second one was an interesting one. That one was off camera, but it was really interesting. I'm gonna make a video follow-up on that one there. That one, you meet some individuals sometimes who are where I once was. The world is very black and white for them. And so he had a lot of questions before he was considering saying yes. And he comes from, a world I once was in where the world is to be understood in a very black and white way. So it was an interesting conversation. I'm not into arguing anymore. Like I understand where people are coming from, but I like asking questions and so on. So you're my third interview today, and I've gotten about 6 no's, but they're really respectful no's because like what I'm doing, again, I do want to make sure people are comfortable with
It's
where.
tough. Like you're doing the thing. And
Yeah.
This is a hard part of the process. So
Yeah.
props to you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Oh, if you want to find me, Binyam on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, I was gonna
Binyam
say.
Asress.
Okay.
ASRESS.
Okay.
Thank you. If you search for Calgary Uber guy,
Yeah.
then you'll find me, and then I used to do that once upon a time.
You're the Calgary Uber guy?
So I used to drive. The whole way this started was I was making videos of my Uber rides because I was having great success with the riders, and their response was really unique. Maggie, it was more like, this is like, I never expected this. We weren't talking about this in specific.
Yeah,
It was just
talking.
generally. And I thought, I've only done this for a little while here, but maybe I could share with other Uber drivers what I do, and maybe they could find some ideas. And it just took off from there, and more than Uber drivers watched it, and all over the world they're just like, ah! And then, so my platform started growing. I got consent, of course, from those I rode with saying, hey, are you comfortable with this conversation if I would post it? And then they were like, like my followers would say things like, Uber's gonna reach out and sponsor you and these. And I was like, I know like it's catching traction, but I'm nowhere near that place. And then Uber reached out at one point. They're like, we've been watching you. and so that opened up like media outlets, requests to speak on things Uber, and I haven't done that for a couple of years now, but that's a way to catch my name again.
Okay, we'll find you.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Have a great afternoon.
Cheers.
Bye.